This is Internet Marketing.
Hello, Kelvin Newman here, and welcome to the Internet Marketing Podcast. We've got a slightly different change of format coming up over the next few weeks. Recently, we had the Brighton SEO event, and one of the popular elements of the program there are panel discussions, where we get groups of people together to have live discussions around interesting topics around search and more broadly digital marketing. So we've decided to take a few of those panels and use them as episodes for the Internet Marketing Podcast, so you can get a bit of a sense of what those panels are like at Brighton SEO. So yeah, we've got one of those coming up. I hope you really enjoy it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neha Khanna, and I will be your lead panelist today. Joining me, we have Lorcan, Lucia, and Caleb. But thank you so much for your time today for joining us in our SEO e-commerce panel. We actually have a diverse group of SEO experts sitting here with me who come with unique backgrounds, which is exciting. But what to expect today? So we'll kick off with brief introductions and an icebreaker, and then we'll dive into to discuss the challenges of SEO in the e-commerce industry, some of the strategies we use to address them. And we'll also wrap up our discussion talking about how to measure success. So there's going to be topics on what KPIs and metrics to focus on when it comes to SEO in e-commerce. And towards the end, we also have valuable tips to share with all of you. So each panelist is also going to share one valuable tip. I hope that you can take away home. We'll also set some time, probably 10 to 15 minutes towards the end for Q&A. So we're going to open the floor and you guys can ask us any questions you have. But get up, because whether you are a business owner or a budding SEO specialist or even a seasoned marketer, we hope this panel helps you with all the knowledge you need to succeed in your SEO career in your industry. But before we begin, I'd like to know more about your backgrounds. So by raise of hands, tell me how many of you are coming from an agency. Oh, that's cool. That's a lot of people here. Retailer. Nice. And tech industry, tech analytics, tech partners, tech vendors. Great. I like how we have such diverse backgrounds, because you're going to be relating to all our panelists here because they come from the same backgrounds as you guys. But starting with me and my intro, I am Neha Khanna, and I serve as a product manager at Wayfair. Wayfair is a giant e-commerce website that sells furniture. But hey, we not only just sell furniture, we sell everything home, from home decor to kitchen appliances to furniture. And yes, I'm not here to market my company, but throughout my career, I've really embraced a variety of roles. I started as software engineer, data science, product management, but all in all, I've been in the MarTech space. But you see how they say SEO chooses you, SEO somehow finds you. So I found my career in SEO with Wayfair back in 2021. But since then, I've expanded my role into paid search as well. And very recently, I got into supplier advertising on Wayfair. So it's been an interesting journey, very rewarding, very professional. But enough about me. I would like to know more about Lorcan here, who's sitting on my right. So Lorcan, why don't you give us your brief introduction and tell me what got you into your current role?
Yeah, so just like Neha, SEO sort of discovered me as well, sort of fell into it after university. And I guess what has kept me interested in it is something that you get to use lots of different parts of your brain. It's something that kind of includes creativity, tech, data, and lots of different things. And that's what's kept me excited in it and interested in it. And nowadays, I'm a senior SEO specialist at Studio Hawk. So that is a specialist SEO agency, so only doing one thing, and that's SEO. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Lorcan. All right, Lucia, do you want to go next?
Hey everyone, I'm Lucia Dello. I'm the founder of a small data partnership called Dello Insights. I'm new to e-commerce. I've been in e-commerce for about 3 years. My background is I'm a data analyst. I spent lots of time working at big organisations dealing with large data sets, making lending decisions, reporting, financials, everything like that, monitoring. And then I've also worked with a lot of SMEs on the financial side as well, understanding what brings them money into the business and how to manage their cash flows.
Caleb.
I'm brilliant. I'm Caleb Chatfield. So again, I've got a slightly different background to the other panelists. Throughout my career, I've worked with technology partners mainly, even more so kind of within kind of HR, payroll, and other parts of kind of business function first before I landed in SEO. But I've been working with Bodify for the last few years based in London. And Bodify is kind of an analytics and automation software company which supports e-commerce globally. Echoing what the others have said, I fell into SEO as well. I find that previously I was supporting quite dry subjects, right, with kind of business function, and SEO has, I think, kind of echo Lorcan's point, a little bit more flair in terms of the creativity side. So that's me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for our panelists today. Well, like I said, they all come from different backgrounds. So you're going to have different perspectives, whether it's from an agency, a business side of things, or even like giant tech analytics, having enterprise clients, right? So let's dive into our main content. And the first question I have for the panelists is, what, according to you, are some of the common challenges in SEO that we face today within the e-commerce industry? And Caleb, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So my experience is working with some of the largest websites in e-commerce, and therefore I think my experience is kind of tailored by that. For me, one challenge that I think is critical, and to be honest, this is relevant regardless of whether you have 1,000, 10,000, a million SKUs on your website. But scalability is always going to be a challenge, right? And what I mean by scalability is the visibility of the website generally, which will become more of a challenge as we have more products and more terms that we want to target, but also the teams involved in supporting that endeavor. As our businesses get larger in e-commerce, we invent more teams to track, to measure, to prove out the value of the things, the initiatives that we might want to take. Neha, your own website has some kind of pretty colossal challenges when it comes to kind of technical SEO in terms of visibility, and the kind of the visibility of its catalog of products. And whilst not everybody is facing the same sorts of challenges and same sorts of scale, I still think that the nature of different teams and the siloing between those teams, the sharing of data, can cause us a lot of challenges in terms of what we do and how we execute on what we'd like to do as a business.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that when it comes to scalability, because Wayfair has millions of SKUs and we have millions of pages. So visibility gets challenging. Here, we need more resources. We need more scalable data infrastructure. And when it comes to analytics capabilities on top of that, everything becomes crucial, right? Especially when you're handling growing volumes of data, because as your e-commerce businesses grow, so grows the data within it. And speaking of data, I'm pretty sure, Lucia, you'll have a wealth of insights to offer.
I do indeed, Neha. So what I typically see is that the e-commerce retailers, the smaller SMEs I work with, they've got data coming from 3 different sources. They've got all the marketing data all around the engagement, the activity, the channels, and eventually what sales are made. Then within the e-commerce platform, they can then see what products are being sold, how the stock's moving over time, where the refunds are coming from, how the orders are changing. And then thirdly, they've got financial information where their accountant's giving them a monthly profit and loss or an annual profit and loss figure. So there's 3 different types of data sets going on. The 3 different types of data that link together. It's all over different data periods with different things in it. And there as a business owner trying to think, why aren't my profits growing? Am I making enough sales to cover my costs? Why isn't the money in my bank account increasing? Am I spending the right money on my marketing? Am I getting the returns I need? But just the way the data's sitting there, they can't answer that question. And then they're in a situation where they think, if I want to do something different to my business, I'd like to make an informed decision knowing that the information I've got is correct. But where they haven't got that information there, they either make a decision based on partial information, which might or might not be correct, or even worse, they don't make a decision at all. They sit there going, I know something's right, but I can't get my handle on it, therefore I can't tackle it. So as a business, it causes some issue that way. And it's a very challenging market at the moment in e-commerce. There's a lot of change going on all the time. So as a business owner, they need to be fluid, aware of where the trends are, what parts of their business, which products are selling the best, which ones aren't working out for them, so they can actually make those changes and be as fluid and responsive as they can. But if they haven't got the data set up in a way they can use it and work with it, they're then at a real disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, data is important, like Lucia was talking about, but to be able to extract actionable insights from data is all the more important. Challenging and exciting at the same time, right? So, Lorcan, what do you have to say on the challenges side from an agency point of view?
Yeah, so as an SEO agency, I think there are three main challenges that we face with e-commerce businesses, which is attribution, nerves, and mindset. So we live in this era of like the messy middle. There's it's getting increasingly harder to see actually which channels provide that value. There's lots of different interactions along the way. So as an agency, we need to spend more time actually reporting on that, finding out that truth, and that eats into the time that we're also expected to do stuff for clients as well. And I think that's a problem that lots of businesses face. Attribution is something that is coming up a lot with businesses that we work with. Nerves as well, there's a lot more uncertainty at the minute. So businesses really want guarantees, and that's not really something that you can come by easily in SEO. I think if an SEO is guaranteeing you results, I think they're lying through their teeth. So for us, we don't work with everyone. We like to qualify businesses more, and we only like to work with people that we feel like we can make a difference with. But yeah, nerves becomes a challenge. People want guarantees, and that's just not something that you can offer as an SEO. And the mindset thing is, businesses, I think some really like SEO as an exciting sort of channel, but I think some see it as a sort of a box ticking exercise. They think it's, they're not really that interested in it, but it's something that they know that they should be doing. And that can really hold you back. I've seen some eye-watering sums being spent on paid ads each month. And, SEO isn't as exciting to lots of businesses as like a television ad or a viral social media moment. So that mindset can really hold you back and really hold us back as an agency as well, when you're just constantly trying to prove to someone that SEO is something that should be seen as an investment and not a cost. Yeah.
No, I love how you said SEO is an investment. Totally agree to that point, because unlike paid advertising, right, your results of SEO efforts are more sustainable long term. You really need a very strong online presence, and that does come with SEO. So yes, SEO is an investment. But great things. By show of hands, again, tell me how many of you were able to relate to these challenges, like with scalability and data and SEO, underselling SEO. Awesome. And I'm sure now you're waiting to understand how to even address them, right? So now, jumping on to our next topic, can you share some of the strategies we are using to resolve those challenges? I'd like to start with Lucia. So can you share some light on those data implications?
Yes. So actually why I really set myself up was that when I realised all this information wasn't very accessible, I thought I want to create this kind of unified view of the data. So in terms of the technical side, the way we've been doing that is we've got some APIs. We can then feed in the information that comes off the e-commerce platform. We then put it into a data warehouse. And when we're in the data warehouse, we can clean the data, get rid of if you've ever seen the e-commerce data, when you see an individual sale, an individual product, the way it's set up, it's just not very nice to work with. So we've then been trying to smooth all that information out, get it to look consistent. We're then putting extra calculations on top of it. For example, if it's a new product, we identify it's a new product. We can then track it being a new product. So we're really trying to get this kind of human face to the data. And then finally, our final stage after do this error checking is then put into a dashboard. The dashboard then allows us to have a unified source of data. So every single person we bring in, it goes through this whole process, cleaning, checking, and then goes into a standard dashboard. So we can then quickly get to the results. So an SME isn't then thinking, well, I know I need some data. I don't know where to find it. What are the things you want to see? And for them, it's, a value for money investment. It doesn't take this long lead time to get there. And as soon as they get their information into it, they can then say this is what they want to see. So really it's trying to translate it and then create something scalable, because obviously we're working with lots of different companies who've got lots of different data, but if they're using a common platform, we're interested in WooCommerce and Shopify is where we've started, then that works for them. So if you're in a business where you're typically seeing, your clients are using certain platforms, then you want to make sure your solution works for that platform. There's Power BI, there's BI Query, there's Looker, all of those kind of different suites. We just use one that works for us. So I think part of it is about the technical solution, getting that in place so you can actually get to this data consistently and avoid all the work of the grind of getting the information out. And then specifically on a challenge, one of them is customer lifetime values, which I think is really important. So if you can see the customer lifetime values, so when an order's made, you can then relate it to a customer. Has this person spent before? How many times have they spent? What's their spending pattern? If you can get to that data, you can then start understanding that in the frame of the campaigns that have been run, in the challenge of, where that customer's come from, or what happens. Is it really, are you an acquisition kind of portfolio where it's all about getting people in, or is it about getting people to spend in? And once you understand where you are, you can then start allocating your budget and the company's resources towards the goals that you specifically want, because every single SME I work with is different. But if they can align their metrics to really the things they want to achieve, then you can do that and start drilling down. So if you can get to a big picture where you really understand your acquisition metrics, you're understanding the order values, how they're changing over time, and then you can go on to retention. If you can put all that information together, you can then see the big picture and then work out the things you really need to address, and then actually get some data behind it, which is impartial.
Great. So as I understand, what you're saying is like bringing the data together as in a unified data model is actually what could also help us understand to make sense of the data, right? All you need, yes, everybody has data, everybody owns data, but sometimes we don't know what the data is telling us. So to bring it all together in that unified data model, that's great. Caleb, do you have something to share on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lucia. I think what you say is super relevant around kind of unified data. And I think actually reflecting on some of the points that you're making and the types of data that you're talking about, I wonder how often SEOs have that available to them in their everyday decision making. And I think that probably reflects some of the siloing that we've been talking about generally. If we don't have a full kind of picture of what it means for the business in terms of kind of overall kind of cost of acquisition or other kind of product life cycle metrics, then it means that we're only kind of acting on half the information that could help us to make better and more informed decisions. So that's something we think about a lot at Botify as well, and the kind of the first party data aspect of bringing everything together makes a lot of sense. But I think we can continue to refine that with whatever tools we're using, with whatever kind of support that we're using as teams, to try to bring other teams together. For me, though, I think the ability to make and test changes at scale could help us, certainly in terms of the scalability piece that I was talking to. It's one thing having data from other parts of our business, but we can also create data, right? And one of the ways that we can do that is by iterating and testing the changes that we want to make at scale, or even to sort of subsets of our websites, so that we know within SEO what the value is of making a change before we start to bring in other parts of the organization. And I think this will help us kind of make a more informed approach to the changes that we want to make. So, I speak to a lot of teams across kind of Northern Europe and into kind of the rest of Europe and to an extent into the US. And they give me a variation on the workflow that a typical SEO goes through in terms of an e-commerce website. And that is, identifying and ideating for the problem that they think they see, maybe utilizing agency resource as well to do that, creating a ticket based on that information, based on our own experience as SEOs, and thinking about what we think the impact is going to be, and then starting to involve internal and external dev, prioritizing that ticket against other actions the business might want to take. So that will be competing with other channels, right? And we may not have told a very good story with our own action. It may be lacking data, it may be lacking testing. So we then get to the point where either that will be deprioritized, it's not something that the business wants to do, or it gets put into a sprint at some later date, and may take a number of sprints to then resolve. Right, that's the typical kind of process that we would go through if we're not able to properly validate that a change is going to be successful for us. And we may not get all of the changes that we want, and if we do get them, they may take a long time to actually happen. And then, the final piece of this is, whether it's been successful, and we're only actually defining whether something has been successful. And we'll talk a little bit about the KPIs of success in a minute, but we're only doing that at the point at which we've actually deployed something. And it may be 6 months later, and it may be that the SERP has changed, and it may be that like a bunch of things have happened in that time. We may not even have internal devs anymore, or we might have shipped that off to an external agency or change that team dramatically. So, we need to take a more active role, I think, and change the narrative from the perspective of e-commerce, certainly. I think that, we can obviously do a lot of the identification and ideation ourselves. That is something that, if we're supported by other data points, could be done in a much more kind of thought out way. What is the impact on the business with the change that I'd like to make? But beyond that, we can define a test that, targets a subset of pages. If we're working on a very large website, that might just be a specific page type, where we define what we'd like to do. Maybe we want to add links to that page. Maybe we want to change the metadata targeting. Maybe we want to add structured data and see if there's an impact. Maybe we want to use other parts of the information on the page to enrich the title and H1s, for example. And by testing that truly, then we can essentially have a minimum viable product that we present back to the business, which we can split test over the top of to say, we made this change internally as SEOs. We did this to these pages, and we checked the control, which is materially similar to the variant that we tested on, and we saw this impact, and we've measured it. We can go back to the business with a ticket that is much stronger in terms of, what is the business impact going to be? And we're more likely to get the buy-in of other teams. And we're also including those other teams in the process, which leads to better efficiencies. So that's kind of how I would approach the challenge of scalability generally.
Yeah, that's great. You touched on MVP. That's definitely something that I can relate to, because coming from a product mindset and working on SEO initiatives, we do tend to think of tests as something that we can do on small scale before scaling it up to all our page types or all our millions of pages that we have. That sets a great example of, less investment in getting larger results in a short time versus building something too big, too soon, and yet knowing that SERP changes every other day. And we tend to think that, okay, this did not work, and yet we invested like 2 months into it, right? So how can we have that incremental value or an iterative approach? So love the agile methodology on it. And Lorcan, off to you now. Do you want to share anything on the...
Yeah, so I definitely want to echo the sort of unified data set, having a single source of truth. That would be something that would be especially more helpful to me as an agency. I find sometimes, I might be working on a Shopify site and our GA4 property says a different amount of revenue was made than Shopify revenue. And I'm like, do my numbers match up to your numbers? And sometimes it feels like they know the right answer and they're waiting for me to say the right answer, that kind of thing. So having that kind of single source of truth would be something that would be really quite, I think, transformative for us as an agency, and I think for other agencies as well. And yeah, I've learned the hard way, test. So like early on in my career, I've made some mistakes, like reading an SEO blog post, getting really bullish and being like, look guys, we're going to do this for 100 pages, allocating some of their resources to this. And then when it hasn't gone the right way, there I am looking a bit silly. So when I'm talking to people, and some people, you can see them glazing over straight away when you start talking about stuff like schema markup and stuff like that. But if I can just do it for 1 or 2 pages, get some good data, bring that to them and have a really much stronger proof of concept, or minimum viable product, that really changes the game then, and people are way more willing to listen to you then. Especially when you're working with people who, like I say, don't see SEO as something that's exciting to them. And as an agency, what I like to do, I just really try to focus in on our inputs as well. So again, using Shopify as another example, say if we had decided to make some new collection pages, I really want to focus in on those, tie those sort of results to the inputs that we've had, because then I can win more trust with the business. They can start to believe me more, see what I'm doing, because there's a lot of jargon in SEO. So breaking it down and just showing, hey, we did this thing and it worked really well, and maybe we should think about doing this for more pages. But then you've just got to sit back and let people make that decision themselves. All you can do is just keep advocating, keep on trying to build those case studies, and just building a strong case for the work that you're doing.
Awesome. I think it's a great story that is coming together. So we started off really by saying that we need a data model, a single source of truth. And by reading or understanding those patterns and trends through that data, you're able to bring your own hypothesis on the table rather than, like Lorcan said, trusting a blog right out there. You know what your data is telling you by doing that analytics. And then you go on to that test. And test is so important. And I love A/B tests. They tell you like what's wrong and what's not. And there's obviously, I want to say that, like, there's never a failure. I don't see fail as a term or as a vocab in our dictionary. There's always learn. So you either win or you learn out of it, right? So which is why A/B tests become all the more important. And with that's great. We end our second section and we move on to our third section. And I promised you guys we'll talk about KPIs and metrics. And that's when we are getting into. So how do we even measure success, right? And there's different definitions of success from each of our point of view. But I'd like to ask a panelist, like, what are some of those SEO metrics that are providing value? And how do you know if these metrics or KPIs are sufficient that you're tracking? Lorcan, do you want to start first?
Yeah, so obviously you've got some kind of classic metrics out there. So your traffic, your revenue, and your rankings. For me, what I like to focus in on with traffic is non-branded traffic. And I like to use Google Search Console for this because it's kind of more immune to cookie settings and stuff like that. It gives me a really strong idea, first of all, of the extra SEO value that's being provided. Because if we're helping businesses to be found for their products, that's something that we can take more ownership of and feel more confident that that's something that we've influenced. And yeah, Google Search Console, you get a better idea of the traffic, but then the important thing then is to know whether that traffic is converting and if it's relevant traffic. So yeah, that's when we want to look more at organic search revenue. But again, there's fuckery there. There's, messy middle and all of this. So other things that I like to look at is your average position, your rankings. So again, average position on Google Search Console is a really important thing for me. What I want to see is that we are getting onto more first pages, especially leading into sort of the Black Friday, Cyber Monday part of the year, because there's seasonality to revenue. It's not always going to be there. Businesses are going to be like, hey, where's the money? I'm like, look, we're trying to get into those really strong positions to when people start, when we get to that peak trading season. And something that I think we have to do as an agency is just think outside the box a little bit. So start to think about some more specific business goals. So an example here was a business I work with that sells secondhand vinyl records. And so of course they want more sales, they want to sell more records, perfect. But they also wanted to find more people who want to sell their collections to them. So that's great because that's something that I can really focus in on. That's really quite specific, and we, briefed some content there, worked with them on their sort of pages for that, and he could see that more of those leads were coming in. And then that's a way that we've earned trust. We've worked together on something specific. So yeah, as an agency, you're there to help them make money and stuff. You're there to be helpful as well, help them figure out some other business problems, and you can do a lot of that with SEO. Some other things I like to do is ask them what are the higher average order value kind of products, because that really gets businesses excited as well. If you focus in on those, and they're going to get, really jazzed that people are going to be have bigger baskets. And then there's some other really interesting models out there as well. I know there are some agencies that are using cost per acquisition even for SEO, and I know Botify are involved with a really cool metric called return on search spend. So yeah, there's a lot of data out there, and it's about finding the story in it, being helpful, and yeah, especially for SEO non-branded stuff, first page rankings, and using the Google Search Console for that, for me personally.
Thank you, Lorcan. Caleb, do you want to share next?
Yeah, brilliant. I think, thank you for the plug, by the way. But in terms of measuring success, I think success means different things to different parts of our organization, right? And we should keep that in mind always when we're thinking about a KPI that matters to us in our role, in our part of the organization, may be completely irrelevant to another part of the business, unless we're talking purely about revenue. Then if we're talking about kind of technical metrics as an SEO, visibility, share of voice, like these sorts of metrics, then we should be aware that the so what is super heavy in those KPIs. So I think we should anticipate that the rest of the business is going to ask questions of the KPIs that we hold. And I propose that whenever you're thinking about the success of your own projects, and a metric that you hold to be a successful one, you should play that against what you know other teams are tracking. So, for example, if you're looking at an increase in organic sessions, and you've made changes to the site that are tracking against that, then is organic sessions good? Is more organic sessions good if conversion falls off a cliff, right? So we should be aware that there are things that we hold and we can point to and say, look, this is what we've done and this is why we're successful. But if it strikes against or has an impact on other parts of the business, it may not help us in building our own case internally. So we should test our KPIs against the KPIs of other teams. I think we've talked about a few of them, cost of acquisition being a really clear one and something we should think about across all of our channels. I think we also mentioned at the outset that we know that SEO is a pretty sustainable channel. It's on us to prove that. What is the investment that we're putting into the channel? What is the impact of the channel? What is the return? Thank you, Lorcan. But Ross, so the return on organic search spend looks to try to do that. So it takes a bunch of KPIs from the organizations that we work with around investment in people, the types of optimizations that we would like to make, the challenges that we see on websites, and it compares it directly with investments in other channels, notably in paid, so that we can see a number against a number, which is quite challenging to do for SEO because there's so many moving parts involved. But that's what we're trying to achieve. So data is therefore important, right, in measuring success. But we should keep data as broad as we possibly can and test our own hypotheses against what the rest of the business is thinking. Anticipate is basically the message.
Yeah. No, thank you, Caleb. So as Lorcan and Caleb were sharing, like SEO is just not about traffic, right? Yes, SEO is about traffic, but not just about it. There are many metrics that we may be leaving on the table. So not to specifically focus on just one KPI, but essentially look at all and even through other channels. Lucia, do you want to share next?
Yes. So I'm going to go from a slightly different angle, which I know Lorcan mentioned as well, about these retailers being very interested in the average order values and think about some of the metrics that the retailers are looking for and the things they want to see. So one example is I worked with a company and they launched 3 helmets, the same helmet, 3 different colours, priced it for the same amount, bought it the same amount, but the same marketing budget against it. And then as the sales developed, we realised that one particular colour was performing best of all, doing really well in terms of sale. A second colour had got the lowest refund rates, and the third colour had got the least sales, and they got the highest refund rates. So as the period was emerging of these 3 different products, we were ending up with a situation where we're going to be left with a lot of product in one particular colour which was performing the least well. So then we kind of looked at it and thought, actually, where are we going to be with this? And then we actually changed the strategy behind it, reduced the pricing of the unpopular helmet colour, we then changed the marketing budget to put more marketing budget against the unpopular colour and took the marketing budget away from the most popular colour. So the effect of this at the end of the period was that we achieved more of the aims of the retailer. We managed to reduce down the stock in the least popular colour, get some money back in the business to buy more of the most popular colour. But it meant, from a marketing point of view, if you'd just gone off marketing returns, actually it was a worse strategy to do. But the retailer was happy because they ended up in a position where they weren't holding the stock of their least popular colour. So I think it's really important to try and think as well of the things they want to do. If you're doing a big Black Friday promotion, you know, it might achieve amazing sales for Black Friday. They might be able to stock the product all through December. And then in January, they might get a load of returns coming back in. So it's not really going to help them until you wait till January. So if you're reporting on this great campaign results in November, December, then in January, the picture changes for the retailer. At that point, you know, you kind of need to get back to what they're thinking. In terms of your campaigns as well, there's a lot of housekeeping we can do. For example, campaigns will fail because the retailer's got very low stock on certain items, the products might not be set up correctly, you might have been given the wrong cost of goods for the items, so the margins aren't right. So really, the closer you can work with the retailer and get all these things into their head, what they want. Do they want to do a promotion on an item that's, you know, sitting there selling very slowly, but it's got a good margin on it? Is that more profitable than something that's a bestseller that's got a very low margin in place? But when we can kind of think of the things they want for acquisition, we get way beyond this simple, you know, return on the cost of spending or on the SEO campaign. When we go on to order values, I really like Lorcan's point about these high order values. Again, you know, there's so many reasons why order values change, but you might set up a phenomenal campaign and then you might find the retailers actually then put in a price promotion and discounted everything. So suddenly, you know, you think you're doing really well, but actually they're giving everybody that signed up 10% off. So the returns they receive aren't really the money they thought they're going to make, which is why their cash flow isn't coming through and why they won't feel well off. So if you know that retailer's going to promote certain prices or put price reductions on, you can then kind of build that into the factors and try and protect the margin for them. There's other things we can look at as well, refund rates, which again, I know I talked about Black Friday being a huge issue. It might be certain products, certain categories just got higher refund rates, but having the awareness around those products or categories that do that, we can then, you know, really work out where the work's going on in the business. Exchanges again, if you've got a product which is exchanged a lot of the time, from a retailer's point of view, this is tying up cost, it's tying up the operation as well. So when we get a handle on these different products and the different factors that come together, we can get to a better situation. Free shipping is another one. If your company's giving away free shipping, what's it going to cost them every month? If they're charging for shipping, are they sure they're covering their shipping costs? So all these different things will affect how well they feel they're doing as a business, and why all this, you know, all this return they expect to get on their campaign won't happen if they haven't got these things in their head and they're not keeping control on them. Going on to retention, this is a really interesting thing. We all know it costs less money to, you know, get someone to spend again than to get a new customer, but do we really know what that figure is? How many people are opting out of the promotions so they can never be attracted again? How many people to there? Can you segment it down? Can you look at the customer lifetime values? Can you see who your top performing customers are? How much they're worth for you? Especially if you've got some kind of wholesale model on as well. You might find you're very dependent on a set of customers. You might find that your top 10 retail customers are doing really well for you. You might maybe have a campaign which is attracting a lot more attrition, or a lot more retention, depending on how the campaign's gone. When you can get to these figures and really get a handle on those, you can then be sure this is a business, that you'll work with the business to actually think, well, attribution's more important than retention, or this is my strategy, I'm new in the market, I've got a mature market going on, I've got a hot SEO term, so you can then exploit it and work together. So for me, it's all about being this proportionate thing where you can see everything that's happening, you can then be proportionate and make sure that you're thinking with what the retailer is thinking, so your campaigns can align and you're both working off the same points and the same goals.
Thank you. I really liked how you also segregated and touched on all the different metrics, whether it comes to retention and acquisition, and all in all, to conclude our KPI section. Thank you so much, Lucia. And just to summarize our main content and the discussion, we talked about challenges. We talked about scalability as one, whether your e-commerce business is small or big, but at some point, yes, you're going to scale big. So how do you really manage that large volume of data? and overall how to not underestimate SEO as an investment strategy, to Lorcan's point. We also talked about some of those strategies and resolutions. So having an important single source of truth that kind of ties everything together and brings a good story. You also want to pay attention to testing to get that incremental value versus building something at scale at once, because SERP changes. And last but not the least, really pressure testing your proof of concept, because this will allow you to validate the effectiveness of your SEO campaigns on a very smaller scale. And you can also assess the risks that are associated with it. And in the KPI section, we talked about many metrics, right? But really having or setting clear and specific goals for your SEO campaigns is key, right? And you also want to tie that to your company's objective. Yes, traffic is one thing, but like at the end of the day, higher up, it goes to how the company is making money out of it, right? So don't focus too much on just one metric, whether it's traffic or revenue. You need to look at the bigger picture with different metrics. And as Lucia mentioned, like there's retention to it, there's acquisition. And in some ways, like Caleb mentioned, right, they're all relatable to each other. They somehow all relate to each other. So really ask yourself, is it really worth investing a ton in one channel and to say SEM, a paid channel, right? If the conversion rate is down, or vice versa, there could be another channel B, right? So always tie these metrics to the business objective to make that story together and tight. So think creative and identify continuous opportunities for optimization and growth as well. With that, we conclude our main section and the main topic and the discussion. Now come to my favorite part, is the tip. I'd like to also learn a tip from each of you here, and I'm sure you guys as well. So starting from our left, or my left, Caleb.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't think this is going to surprise anybody here, but the SERP landscape is changing every day. I feel like it's getting quicker and quicker and quicker. I feel like we're seeing more algorithm updates. I think we're seeing more kind of squeezing of organic listings. I think from an e-commerce perspective, we're seeing like tests from Google in terms of how they want the SERP to look. And we need to be more flexible than ever. And, going back to the main thread of my kind of conversation, my tip to you guys would be, we need to test things that worked years ago or even last week may not work next week. Our competitors are doing all sorts of interesting things that we may not have thought about, or that we don't want to commit to at scale. Testing is going to become increasingly important in understanding what's going to win. And I guess alongside that tip, one question back to everybody in this room, which is, how do you know that the changes that you would like to make are going to work? If you're not doing testing, how do you know that they're going to be successful, and how do you know that they're going to set you apart from your peers? If it's something that's difficult to answer, then perhaps it's worth some consideration.
Right. I go for a bit of a gap analysis, really work out what are the key things you really need to know in your business, and where's that gap? Can you do something manually? Can you start small and start collecting some information, and then work out where you want to get to in the longer term? But you might actually find there's a report sitting there you've never really paid attention to. There's some way to start building that information. Once you start building that information, you'll then realise how scalable it is. Is it something you really need to do? And then take the action off the back of that.
I've got a pretty simple tip. It's just do the thing. Do the thing. I think businesses are worried too much about being perfect. I think I've seen them, arguing over, do we use this word here? There's a grammar error there, and it just holds everything back. I think you've got to be brave. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. And yeah, do the thing. Those are the businesses that will win, the ones that are doing the things. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And I would also like to share a tip. This is an SEO technical tip. And I'm talking purely out of experience. You see, sometimes understanding the best internal linking opportunities at scale can be tough, especially when you have this giant website. So if you've already not tried it, Screaming Frog has this in-links report to be able to identify the pages that really need more attention on internal links. So if you have not tried that yet, please do try. Let the Screaming Frog crawl your site and give you all the pages and that report, and put that report in ascending order of the links, and it'll tell you that these are the pages that need more internal links and more attention. But with that, I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and we're also at time, a great mark of 15 minutes that I'm going to leave you guys. But before that, I would like to thank our panelists here. Caleb, Lucia, and Lorcan, thank you so much for being here, for sharing a very insightful and engaging discussion on SEO and e-commerce. Thank you so much. A big round of applause to them, please. Awesome. Now the floor is all yours. We can open it up for Q&A.
I'm really curious, especially from Neha with your huge site catalog. One of the things that comes up in e-com SEO a lot is around out of stock and discontinued products. And it feels like that's one of those things where SEO guidelines and e-commerce reality don't really mesh together very well. So I'm really curious what your take is on that. How you deal with that kind of thing.
So when you said new...
So discontinued and out of stock products. So, you might actually want a 404 and it's okay.
Yeah.
Often doesn't go down well when you're in a room of SEOs.
No, absolutely. The data is dynamic, and that's how we've kept it. So internally, yes, we are tracking when a product goes out of stock, when it's not available, when to put it out. So we have certain flags to monitor, and the pipeline is well connected enough to be able to tell us in runtime dynamically how things keep changing. Because yes, we have millions of SKUs, and the majority of SKUs we don't own. Wayfair is a platform that allows sellers and suppliers to be able to come and put their SKUs. So essentially, it becomes easier for us that way, that we don't really have to manage the inventory because it's not really ours. But in the back end, we maintain a gigantic database such that we're able to make those calls easily and essentially update our database fairly quickly to know that this is out of stock. Because of course, to your point, you're thinking from the perspective of you don't want to give out a bad customer experience as well, right? And that's definitely the main focus that we also think through. But I don't know if that answers your question, and that's where I'm going to leave you on that. But we can definitely chat offline about the technical aspect of it if you like.
I would say, though, that if your team is planning on redirecting, they should be very careful about the handling that they decide to take with the redirects and what the user experience is going to be. You could potentially think about providing some sort of queue to the user, and maybe injected in JavaScript or something similar to let them know that they're being redirected, because I don't think it's a great experience, even if it's a similar product, to move them through. So I've heard that's the discussion point that I've had recently, and it's an interesting one from an SEO perspective, but the user experience can't, it's kind of going back to my point, you're giving to one, you're taking away from another.
I was just going to say, something I recommend for out of stock is just putting an email sign up box. Then you can see how many people are interested in it. And if it's out of stock, you got loads of people signing up to notify me when it's back in stock. Then you've got some data there to be like, hey, let's put this back in stock. So,
oh yeah, that is definitely something that we do have as well. Like if a product is out of stock, like it's a very recent story. I went on the site and I wanted to buy something. It was already out of stock. So notify me. Yes, I can put my email and they can let me know that this is going to be in stock. So that's definitely a better customer experience than not showing anything. And
yeah, so this is one for the panel. So the problem that I've seen over time with e-commerce is that nowadays it's so easy to set up an e-commerce store. And over time with, loads of people want to start a fashion brand or a leisure brand, or they want a store that sells t-shirts. So what would you say is the biggest differentiator then for new players who want to be competitive organically, but the curveball is you can't say links?
Just listen.
I think first and foremost, you just have to have a really good product. Like, you just got to actually put out something that people want to buy instead of just trying to rehash what other people are doing. So that's where you have to start. If you're just doing what other people are doing, you just want to repackage it in a different type of website, just set up a Shopify and drop ship stuff. What value actually you're providing to people? Do you have something people are actually going to buy and tell their mates about? So the only way you can differentiate yourself properly is have a good product that people want to buy, I would say.
I have seen some, and this I don't know whether is a general trend, but something we've seen with some of the customers we support is that there's been a bit of a move away from kind of large marketplaces in certain places and towards individual sellers of goods that have their own voice. I think to Lorcan's point, they have their own kind of niche, and that doesn't stop new players from starting to break into that space with good enough quality of writing and structured websites. One of the things that those other sites have, certainly those that have been around for a while, is a huge amount of bloat, and they can't really deal with that quickly. So these new players are able to kind of move much faster and build more interesting websites with potentially better content, which plays to their advantage. But then I guess the negative is that they maybe don't have the same size of team, they don't have the development resource, they don't have the tools. So I guess both sides kind of balance to some extent, but I guess my point is really, if you trust in your product and you've built good content around it and you have a well-managed site that's modern, then you have a good shot.
Can I just add quickly? I'd also say get that data from the start, because those first few weeks, first few months after the launch, that's going to tell you you're going to hit the targets, you worth your target. I think if you haven't got that feedback mechanism, you can end up quite a way in and then suddenly realise it's not right. So if you're there on the start, you know what your forecasts are, where you need to get to, they can actually get there, then make those changes and quickly adjust, because what you think you're going to do to what actually happens when you're live is a very, very different story. And if they're there and the start can adapt and learn and grow very quickly, they'll be the ones to succeed, rather than waiting to find out a year later, actually, they've got these sales, they've made no money. And, the accountant's basically saying, well, you've lost some money for a year of your life of work,
I would appreciate some insights about content, and more specifically, maybe you can relate to that. I know that Wayfair dropships most of the catalog. So, you have a product manufactured by someone else. They usually provide the content and then you copy and paste. How can you differentiate yourself from the other 100,000 people who do the same thing as you're trying to do, which is to dropship those products?
Yeah, I can go first, and I'm sure other panelists can also join me in answering that. You're absolutely right. I've seen the same SKU on Amazon as well as Wayfair, right? Wayfair promotes a certain brand voice. So there's definitely, in recent times, we've seen that we could revamp some of those product descriptions that suppliers give us to actually differentiate us. I'm sorry? Yeah, by doing what? So very recently, generative AI is a new tool that you can leverage. I wouldn't get into the details of how and when, right? But there's definitely some ideas that I'm throwing on the table. You could do is, with generative AI, there's a lot of content optimization that you can leverage to revamp some of those descriptions, because what you get from the suppliers could be vague, very high level. They're the same descriptions that you're going to see on Amazon or any other platform, right? But at the end of the day, customer focus is that key that you want to pay attention to. So how can I really help the customer understand what this SKU is all about, yet have my Wayfair brand voice, whether it's informative, educational? I really want to help the customer buy this product. So say, for example, there's this red couch, right? This red couch is big, the color is red. It's very high level vague, right? how to make this description compelling enough that it leaves a good experience, but also compels the user that, yes, this is exactly what I want. So you can use those Gen AI tools very recently that have come up to revamp some of those descriptions, add your brand voice tone. And this is something that I'm actually giving a talk on tomorrow to be able to do that. And that is just for that one use case, but there are tons of other use cases that you could possibly do.
And do you have any specific tool that you can mention?
Yes, absolutely. We've used a couple of third-party tools as well, but like very recently, open source, right? Like ChatGPT is there, right? There's Vertex and Palm. There's definitely other third-party tools that you can leverage as well. But it all comes down to what is your use case and how do you use it, right? Because with AI, there's also going to be hallucinations. AI is just going to make up things, and you don't want red couch to be converted into a red XYZ, right? Or a maroon something. It's specific of red, right? So be very specific on what you're giving as prompt. So prompt designing is what I'm talking about tomorrow. But yeah, that's where I'm going to leave you. But any other panelist who would like to join me on content optimization?
The only thing I would add on content is as soon as you start making content for search engines and not people, you're just creating spam. So make sure you're remembering who's actually at the end of your content and make it for humans and not robots.
That is so true. Make it for humans, not for robots.
Hi guys, my name's David. I run a sports e-commerce company. My question to you guys was how we're building an in-house SEO team and sort of structuring it rather than using external agencies. But we need to stay on top of the latest things that are going on in the SEO space. So my question is how to find a good consultant that can guide us through that journey from time to time when we need that support and help rather than paying for a full agency.
Sorry, can you just repeat the last couple of lines again?
Yes, so we're building an internal SEO team. And really what we need is we're looking to try and find like a good consultant. So the question is, how would you go about finding a good SEO consultant in the SEO space without going through a giant agency?
I think, lots of people market themselves well on LinkedIn. You can find people where they back up what they say with case studies. You need to find someone that you can trust. And there's tons of good like SEO publications out there where you can stay up to date yourself. Having that kind of conduit, I would just start on LinkedIn or, putting Lorcan at studiohawk.co.uk into your email inbox.
I appreciate the grind.
Can I ask a couple questions? Yeah. The first question would be to the guy near the pastor. I forgot their name, sorry. So you have previously talked about a messy middle, and I was wondering what are some of the ways you would suggest to make it less messy? So how to figure out the user journey better when it gets very all over the place?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one I don't have an amazing answer for. I'll just probably go back to some of the things I said of trying to be super specific with some of those things that you're pointing on. So for me, like I say, like a classic example is if we've made new pages, it's easier to track revenue through that, and it's easier to find those kind of storylines in that. But I mean, that is the nature of the messy middle. It's, where, all the different touch points people have with the business, and, along the way, an SEO team might really help someone to make up their mind to purchase with you, but they came to you on that last click with a paid ad or something like that. So yeah, not one I have super clear answers for, because I think that's the challenge that everyone's facing. And I think, like I say, testing, being super specific, and really backing yourself up with data as well is the key there.
I spoke to a team recently, and they'd migrated over to GA4 in line with everybody else having to do the same painful activity. They were telling us that organic was looking better, right? It was for their specific use case, they were seeing better revenue. But what they didn't consider was that they weren't measuring like with like between Universal Analytics and GA4, they were still reporting that back to the business though as a success, but they couldn't then link it to anything. So this messy middle thing is something that, with differences in tracking, with differences in tooling, with Google forcing people onto a new kind of analytics which it doesn't track things in the same way, it is challenging. I don't think there, as Lorcan said, I don't think there's an easy answer. I think with GA4 we're essentially starting again, and I've seen so many consultancies spring up just for managing people's GA4, which is a challenge in itself.
And when we work with data, we know there's going to be ambiguity. We know we'll never ever see a perfect picture. So in a way, we have to kind of embrace that ambiguity. Do I know if I'm losing 5%, 20% of results? Is it changing over time? Is it changed by a channel? Or is it actually, in my opinion, sometimes it might be time better spent to actually spend the money on your marketing activity or some other activity, rather than really, really trying to get to the bottom of something where you know you'll never get that absolutely clear answer. And if we're realistic with the clients, we know we're going to miss whatever method we choose. We will miss things, and that actually we know it's okay to miss some things, but we believe that this strategy overall will get these results in.
Okay, so one more question, and I can put the mic down. So it's for a Wayfair marketing guru. So I'm curious about how Wayfair attributes conversions, and if it attributes some conversions to multiple channels, then how does it deduplicate those conversion attributions? Yeah.
Yes. The short answer is yes, we are attributing conversion to different channels, but specifically in SEO, it gets hard to convert and map directly that conversion coming through the SEO channel. In other channels, whether it's PLA or SEM, it's just simpler. So that dedupe is still a small problem for us. What we really go for is looking at the primary metrics in SEO to be able to say that we are doing well is your traffic, your click-through rate, your page visits, and also on-page engagements in terms of add to cart, PDP, your page, product display page conversion, and other rates. But I wouldn't really say in SEO we specifically look at conversion rate because it's hard to kind of map that one-to-one connection. I know we are at time, but if you have more questions, we are going to be here around outside the room if you want to come and chat about it. But thank you so much for being such an engaging audience and sticking around. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of the Internet Marketing Podcast, produced by the team behind Brighton SEO, the world's largest specialist digital marketing conference covering SEO, PPC, paid social, web analytics, and content marketing. If you want to find out more about us and the show, you can check out the website, internetmarketingpodcast.org. And if you've not already subscribed to the show, you should hit that subscribe button. And can I ask a favour, if you are subscribed and you're enjoying the show, can you leave us a review wherever you're watching or listening to the show? And if you want to get in touch, become a guest on the show, or just generally feedback about what we're doing, you can always email me. That's kelvin@brightonseo.com. So KELVIN@brightonseo.com. Or of course, you can contact me on social media. So LinkedIn or Twitter, my usernames are Kelvin Newman. See you soon.